It had always been a quiet neighborhood. The kind of place where everyone knew everyone, where kids played outside until the streetlights flickered on, and the adults gathered at the corner store, sharing stories of days gone by. The houses were small, modest, but safe. The kind of place you felt at ease, as if time itself had decided to take a break. Except for Mr. Alvin Hill. The old man lived at the far end of Willow Street, in a crumbling house that hadn't seen a fresh coat of paint in decades. His yard was overgrown with weeds, and his front door was always locked. He was a recluse, someone the rest of the neighborhood had long ago decided was best left alone. In fact, most people hardly remembered when he'd first moved in, or why. His presence, though always there, seemed to blend into the background of the town's quiet rhythms. But there was one person who never stopped noticing him. Lily Parker, only 10 years old, had always been the curious type. While the other kids played games of tag or rode their bikes in the summer heat, Lily often found herself drawn to the window of her house, staring down at Mr. Hill's place. She had seen him only a handful of times. A glimpse of a frail figure through his dusty windows, a flicker of movement in the yard. One afternoon, Lily was playing in her front yard when she spotted him. Mr. Hill was standing at the edge of his property, staring out into the street, his eyes lost in some far-off place. He didn't seem to notice her watching him, so she took a few tentative steps toward his house. She had heard the rumors. The stories whispered between the adults, the kind of stories that weren't meant for kids' ears, but kids always overheard anyway. They said Mr. Hill was strange, that he was hiding something, that he'd been living alone for as long as anyone could remember. But Lily was never one to believe gossip, not without seeing it for herself. "Hi, Mr. Hill," she called out, waving. He didn't respond at first, then slowly turned his head, his wrinkled face breaking into a small, cautious smile. "Well, hello there, young lady," he said, his voice surprisingly soft. "What brings you to my neck of the woods?" Lily, feeling a little shy but determined, shrugged. "I just wanted to say hi. You never come outside." He chuckled, a raspy sound that seemed to echo in the quiet afternoon. "I'm old. There's not much to see out here that I haven't seen already." For some reason, that answer didn't sit right with Lily. It wasn't that she didn't believe him, it was just the way he said it. His words felt heavy, as if he was carrying something more than just the weight of his years. "Do you need help with anything?" Lily asked, hoping to make a friend. Mr. Hill's eyes narrowed slightly, and for a moment, Lily thought he might send her away. But then, after a long pause, he nodded. "Well, I suppose I could use a hand with the garden. If you're not afraid of a few weeds." Lily grinned, eager to help. She didn't expect what came next. As she followed him into his yard, she noticed that the air felt off. The closer they got to the back of the house, the heavier the atmosphere became. The air was thick with the scent of damp earth and something else, something metallic like blood. The weeds were taller than they should have been, some almost reaching her waist. They were tangled in places, almost as if someone had stopped tending to the garden a long time ago. "Here, kid," Mr. Hill said, pointing to a patch of overgrown plants. "Just start pulling those if you would. They've been here for ages, I think." Lily got to work, trying to push aside the discomfort that tugged at her insides. As she pulled weeds from the soil, something caught her eye. A piece of metal, rusted and twisted, was buried beneath the earth. Curiosity piqued, she dug around it, her fingers brushing against something cold and smooth. "Mr. Hill," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "what's this?" He didn't answer right away. When he finally did, his voice was tight, his words clipped. "It's nothing. Just an old thing I buried years ago. Nothing to worry about." But Lily was worried. She felt it in the pit of her stomach, the unease that had crept up on her the moment she saw that strange object. Her hands, shaking now, pulled it free. It was a small metal box, worn but sturdy. It had strange markings on it, like a code she couldn't understand. "Mr. Hill," she began, but before she could say more, the old man's hand shot out, grabbing her wrist with surprising strength. His eyes, once gentle, were now filled with something dark, something old. "Put that down, Lily," he said, his voice low and urgent. "You don't know what you're dealing with." Lily pulled her wrist free, stepping back. "What is it?" What are you hiding? For a long moment, there was silence, the weight of his gaze pressing down on her. Finally, he let out a sigh, the sound full of years of regret. It's not just a box, kid. It's a reminder. A reminder of what they did to me, and what they did to this town. Lily felt a chill run down her spine as he continued. They took us, people like me, and used us in their experiments. The government, the scientists, they thought they could control us. They thought they could make us into something different. But I was the only one who survived. And now the town is paying for what happened. What happened? Lily whispered, her voice barely audible. Their experiment failed. And the people they used, well, let's just say they're still out there waiting. And they're hungry. Lily's heart raced. She dropped the box, stepping back, but Mr. Hill's voice followed her, low and grave. You should go home, Lily. It's not safe here anymore. As she ran back down the street, her mind raced. The peaceful neighborhood she had always known now felt like a trap. The neighbors she thought she knew now seemed like strangers. And as the sun began to set, she could almost hear the whispers of the past, the ones Mr. Hill had warned her about. The experiment wasn't over, and the town wasn't safe anymore. Lily never went back to Mr. Hill's house. But sometimes, when the wind blew just right, she swore she could hear him calling out to her, begging her to remember. And that, she knew, was the worst part of all.